Black billionaire walks into hospital, sees his ex giving birth to twins and freezes at the truth. It started with a scream. Not just any scream, the kind that slices through the sterile hum of a hospital corridor and punches the gut of every person within earshot. Julian Ford's steps froze mid-stride just outside the maternity wing of St. Andrew's Hospital in Chicago. He had only come to drop off a donation check, quietly, discreetly. It was supposed to be routine, a favor for his foundation. In and out. But that scream, it wasn't just familiar. It was hers. He turned toward the sound, heart thudding, confusion gripping his chest like a vice. No, it couldn't be, not her, not here, not now. But then he heard her voice. "Where's my doctor? Something's wrong. Please, someone, help!" Julian's entire body reacted before his brain could catch up. He pushed through the double doors, ignoring the startled nurse who tried to stop him. "Sir, you can't go in. This is a restricted—" But he was already moving. There she was, Harper Ellis. Sweat drenched her forehead, her curly dark hair plastered against her cheeks, her body curled on the delivery bed as nurses swarmed around her, her face contorted in pain, but her voice— he hadn't heard that voice in 5 years, and yet it still hit him with the same force. He couldn't move. He was frozen. Time folded in on itself. 5 years ago, Harper had disappeared from his life without warning. One day, they were together, building a future. The next, she was gone. No calls, no messages, no answers. And now she was giving birth? Here, alone? A sharp voice pulled him back. "Ma'am, you have to push. The babies are in distress." Babies? Plural. Julian stumbled back, gripping the wall for support as the room blurred. Twins? His stomach twisted as a tidal wave of realization crept over him. He looked at Harper, her chest heaving, eyes wild with pain, but also fear. Not for herself. For them. For her children. He turned, staggered out of the room, and ducked into an empty hallway. His hand trembled as he pulled out his phone. "Dominic," he said when his assistant picked up, "get me everything you can find on Harper Ellis. I don't care what it costs. I need everything, and I need it now." Back inside, Harper cried out again. The twins were coming fast, the doctor barking commands, the nurses scrambling. Julian stood outside the glass wall, watching it unfold like a scene he wasn't supposed to witness. But every second pulled him deeper into the truth he hadn't dared consider. One nurse emerged minutes later, red-faced and exhausted. "Are you family?" she asked him. Julian opened his mouth. No words came out. Then, "Yes." She eyed him with a bit of suspicion. "She's stable now, but we need information for the birth certificates. Father's name?" He stared at her, throat dry. I'm not sure." She tilted her head. "She named you on the emergency contact." Julian blinked. "What?" Before he could ask anything more, the nurse had gone. And Julian was alone again. Except he wasn't. Across the hall, the doctor stepped out of the delivery room holding 2 swaddled newborns. They were silent, peaceful. Tiny fists curled against their soft cheeks. Julian's eyes locked on them. 2 babies, 2 lives, and one truth he could no longer avoid. He walked to the window and looked closer. Both infants had the same birthmark he had on his left shoulder. A tiny crescent shape just below the collarbone, the same one that ran in his family for 3 generations. He staggered back, breath catching in his throat. His world tilted. He was their father. He knew it in his bones. But why hadn't Harper told him? Why had she disappeared? Why had she gone through all of this without him? A cold voice interrupted his spiral. "Well, look who decided to show up." Julian turned to find a man leaning against the wall in scrubs, early 40s, expensive watch, confident, smug smile. "Dr. Whitmore," the man offered, extending a hand with mock politeness. Obstetrics. I've been overseeing Harper's case for the last few months. Julian didn't take the hand. Did she ever mention me? The doctor raised an eyebrow. Julian Ford, the billionaire? Julian's jaw tensed. So she did. Dr. Whitmore's smile thinned. Let's just say she had her reasons for keeping you out. Julian's stomach dropped. What do you mean? Before Whitmore could answer, the nurse reappeared. Mr. Ford, Miss Ellis is awake. She asked to see you. Julian's eyes flickered from the nurse to the smug doctor, then toward the hospital room. He walked in slowly. Harper was lying in bed, exhausted but alive. Her eyes met his, and in that moment there were no lies, no anger, just pain. Deep old pain. You knew? He asked softly. She nodded, then shook her head. I didn't plan to. I didn't know I was pregnant when I left. Julian stepped closer, voice rough. Why did you leave, Harper? She looked away, lips trembling. Because someone made me. The words landed like a punch. Who? He whispered. Harper glanced toward the door. Your mother. Silence. Deafening. Julian felt his blood turn to ice. She told me you were engaged, that you were planning to end things. She made it very clear I was a problem she needed to solve. She wrote me a check and said if I truly loved you, I'd disappear, for your sake. Julian staggered back, heart pounding. My mother? Harper nodded, tears spilling. I was scared. I had no one. And then I found out I was pregnant. I couldn't go back. I didn't want the babies caught in your world. I didn't want them to be weapons in someone else's game. Julian collapsed into the chair beside her, running a hand through his hair. He had no idea. All this time he thought she'd left him, betrayed him. But she'd been protecting their children, and now they were here, alive, beautiful, his. He looked at her, voice breaking. You should have told me. I wanted to, so many times, but I didn't know how. A long pause, then Julian stood, eyes steely. Don't worry, I'll handle this. What does that mean? It means my mother's going to answer for what she did. Harper watched him go, and for the first time in 5 years she felt hope. Real, terrifying, beautiful hope. Julian didn't go home that night. Instead, he sat in the dim glow of the neonatal ward, staring through the glass at the twins sleeping peacefully in their bassinets. Each breath they took felt like a weight settling deeper on his chest. He had names now, Elijah and Eden. The nurse had told him, not Harper, because Harper was asleep or pretending to be. He hadn't spoken to her again since their raw conversation hours earlier. After learning what his mother had done, Julian felt like a stranger in his own skin. The betrayal cut deep, deeper than he expected. He had always believed he controlled every piece of his empire, every detail of his life, but his own mother had rewritten his future. And Harper had vanished because of it. He looked at Elijah, the smaller of the two. A tiny fist curled by his cheek. Julian could see it, the resemblance, his nose, that familiar tilt of the jaw. It wasn't just the birthmark. These were his kids, his children. And he had missed everything, their kicks, their first sonograms, the anxiety, the joy, all stolen from him by a lie. Julian stood, his tailored coat falling back into place like armor. The hospital felt cold now, hollow. He dialed a number. It rang twice before a groggy voice answered. Mr. Ford, it's past midnight. Dominic, I need to speak to my mother, now. I don't care what time it is. Wake her. Of course, sir. Right away. 10 minutes later, Julian's private SUV pulled up to the gated mansion he once called home. His mother, Evelyn Ford, stood in the doorway, elegant in a silk robe, unbothered by the hour. Her silver hair was perfectly styled, as always, her expression composed. "Julian," she said smoothly, "you look tired." He didn't respond. He walked right past her into the house. "I went to St. Andrew's today," he said without turning around. "Oh?" She closed the door with a soft click. "Another donation." "No," he said, slowly turning to face her. "I saw Harper." Her face didn't flinch, not even a blink. She was giving birth. A pause. To twins. Silence. Then she moved to the liquor cabinet, poured herself a scotch. "So," she said evenly, "you know. You knew they were mine. I suspected. And you sent her away." "I protected you." Julian stepped forward, fury boiling beneath his skin. "You destroyed me." "She was a distraction, a liability. You were set to take Ford Financial Global. You couldn't afford scandals." "Scandals," he echoed, disbelief cracking in his voice. "You call Harper and my children a scandal." Evelyn sipped her drink, unshaken. "She wasn't one of us, Julian. Her family. No background, no pedigree, no name. I gave her an opportunity to walk away quietly, with dignity. She accepted it. That should tell you something." Julian stared at his mother like he was seeing her for the first time. "She was alone, pregnant, scared, and you leveraged that fear to manipulate her. I saved your future." "No," he said quietly, "you destroyed it." He turned and walked out. Behind him, Evelyn didn't follow. She didn't call after him. Just stood there, perfectly still, her shadow long against the marble floor. Back at the hospital the next morning, Harper sat upright in bed, nursing a coffee when Julian walked in. Her face lit up briefly, then dimmed with caution. "I wasn't sure if you'd come back," she said. "I wasn't sure either," he admitted. They sat in silence for a moment. "I saw your mother," he added. Her eyes dropped. "I figured you might." She admitted everything, no apologies, just calculation. Harper let out a small, bitter laugh. "Sounds like her." Julian took a breath, steadying himself. "I want to be in their lives, Harper. Fully. Not just the billionaire on paper. I want them to know me. I want to know them." Her eyes searched his face. "And what if that puts them in danger, in the spotlight?" "Julian, your world isn't soft. It doesn't forgive." "Neither does yours," he replied. "You've done this alone for too long." "I had to," she said softly. "You weren't there. Because I didn't know, but I do now, and I'm not going anywhere." She looked at him, truly looked. The weariness in her eyes, the shadows of years gone by, the hesitation of a woman who had carried too much for too long. "Then prove it," she said. "Not to me. To them. Be the father they deserve." Before Julian could respond, the door burst open. A sharply dressed man in a dark blue blazer stepped inside, flanked by a woman holding a leather-bound folder. "Ms. Ellis?" the man asked. "I'm from Child Protective Services." Harper's face went pale. "Excuse me," Julian said, stepping in front of her. "We received an anonymous tip about the mother's mental fitness and lack of support system. We're here to conduct an emergency welfare evaluation for the infants." Harper gasped. "What?" "That's insane." Julian's voice turned lethal. "You're telling me someone sent you here to take her kids?" The agent raised a hand. "We're just here to assess, sir. Standard protocol when concerns are raised." Julian's eyes narrowed. Anonymous tip? His blood ran cold. Evelyn. That cold-blooded move wasn't random. It was strategic, a warning, a threat. He stepped forward, his tone precise. "You will leave this room, now. If you speak to Ms. Ellis again without her legal counsel present, you'll find yourself in court so fast your badge will still be spinning." The man faltered. "And you are?" Julian slowly pulled a business card from his wallet. Julian Ford, founder and chairman of Ford International Holdings. The agent's eyes widened. The woman behind him blanched. I suggest you check your sources next time. They turned and left, stunned. Julian turned back to Harper. She was trembling. He placed a hand gently on her arm. This isn't over, but I'm not letting anyone take our children. She looked up at him, and for the first time she didn't see the billionaire. She saw the man she once loved, and maybe, just maybe, could trust again. Julian didn't sleep again, not after what had happened with CPS. The timing, the language used in the complaint, the calculated cruelty, it all screamed Evelyn's fingerprints. He knew her tactics. He'd seen them used against competitors, against board members, even distant relatives who stepped out of line. But now she had used them against Harper, against his children. That crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. By morning, Julian had made calls, quiet ones, lawyers, crisis managers, media strategists. If Evelyn wanted a war, she was about to find out she'd underestimated the battlefield. At the same time, Harper sat quietly in the hospital room, holding Eden against her chest as Elijah slept nearby. Her eyes were fixed on the soft rise and fall of the baby's breath, but her mind was a storm. She had been scared before, pregnant, alone, exiled by the most powerful woman she'd ever met. But this, having the system almost take her babies away, this was different. This was fury. When Julian returned, she didn't speak, just looked at him, one eyebrow slightly raised. He closed the door behind him. I have a team handling it. CPS won't come near you again. You shouldn't have to do that, she said. We're not a charity case. You're not. This is about justice. She stood and gently laid Eden back in the crib, then turned to face him. No, Julian. This is about power. He frowned slightly. I've lived the past 9 months watching over my shoulder, she said, her voice rising. I changed apartments. I avoided public clinics. I gave birth without a family member at my side. All because of what your mother might do. Do you know what it feels like to plan your child's life around who might try to steal it? I didn't know, he said, quieter now. But you do now, she snapped. So if you're really serious about being in their lives, I need to know you're not just here to protect them from Evelyn. I need to know you're not going to become her. The words stung. Julian's jaw clenched. I'm not her. Then prove it. Not with money. With action. Julian took a breath. He could have thrown 1,000 solutions at her. Bought a house. Hired security. Built a new wing of the hospital. But she wasn't asking for that. She wanted him to fight as a father, not a billionaire. He nodded. That afternoon, Harper received a visitor she hadn't expected, an old friend from nursing school, Mia Tron. Mia had worked her way up to become head of social services at a nonprofit clinic on the South Side. Sharp, blunt, loyal. Girl, I had to see for myself, Mia said, hugging Harper carefully to avoid jostling her healing body. Twins? You trying to catch up all at once? Harper laughed for the first time in days. Don't tempt me. I barely slept in 48 hours. They sat by the window, sipping hospital-grade tea. I heard through the grapevine someone dropped a report on you to CPS, Mia said, dropping her voice. Harper nodded. Julian's mother. Mia, she whistled low. Figures. She's the type who files reports wearing pearls and a smile. Harper tilted her head. You've heard of her? Mia raised an eyebrow. Julian Ford. Harper, girl, you had a baby with Black Wall Street. He's practically royalty in business circles. Of course I've heard of her. Harper's chest tightened. I didn't want people knowing. I tried to keep it quiet. Well, it's not quiet anymore. And if she's going after you, you better be ready for headlines. You want to stay out of this mess, or you ready to fight back? Harper's eyes flicked toward the bassinets. I don't have the luxury of hiding anymore. Meanwhile, across the city, Julian walked into a boardroom he used to command. Ford International's headquarters gleamed with power, glass, steel, silence, the kind of place where secrets lived in plain sight. Waiting inside was Andrew Cole, a senior partner at Ford's legal firm, loyal to a fault, but even loyalty frayed under pressure. "You sure you want to go through with this?" Andrew asked. "I'm sure. You do realize Evelyn's position on the board is about to be vacant," Julian finished. Andrew blinked. "You're removing your mother from the board?" "She used company resources to investigate Harper. She ordered a background check through a firm under our holdings. I have the invoice. That's abuse of power." Andrew leaned back, silent. "And if she retaliates, I'll make it very public." Julian wasn't bluffing. He had already reached out to a journalist at The Atlantic. If Evelyn escalated, the world would know exactly what lengths the Ford empire went to in order to control the narrative, even if it meant endangering her own grandchildren. That night, Harper received a call from the hospital director. He wanted to inform her that an anonymous donor had just fully funded a maternal care initiative in her name. When she asked who the donor was, he simply said, "He prefers to remain a silent partner, but he said you'd understand." She hung up, stunned. A moment later, a knock at the door. Julian stepped in. He looked tired, lighter somehow. "What did you do?" she asked. He hesitated, then offered a small smile. "Something right, I hope." She looked at him for a long time, then said, "Come hold your son." Julian walked over and gently lifted Elijah into his arms. The baby squirmed, then settled. For a moment, the world outside the hospital room didn't exist. No lawyers, no reporters, no Evelyn. Just this. Then Harper whispered something that shifted everything. "I think Elijah recognizes you." Julian looked up. "Because he didn't cry when you picked him up. He usually does with strangers." Julian's throat tightened. "I'm not a stranger," he said. "No," Harper said softly. "You're not." But just as the moment settled, Julian's phone vibrated in his pocket. A text from Andrew. "We have a problem. Evelyn just filed for emergency custody rights as the children's only fit legal guardian. She claims Harper is unstable, and she's demanding a court hearing." Julian looked at Harper, then down at his son. The war had officially begun. Julian didn't flinch as he stared at the court summons. The name Evelyn Ford glared back at him from the top of the emergency filing. She'd moved fast, too fast, claimed Harper was mentally unfit, claimed Julian had abandoned his responsibilities as a father, claimed the twins were in imminent danger of being raised in an unstable environment. He passed the phone to Harper. Her hand trembled as she read it, lips tightening with every word. "She's calling me unstable," she said, nearly laughing through disbelief. "I carried 2 children for 9 months, alone. I worked until the week I gave birth, and now that I've survived all of it, I'm unfit." "She's trying to wear you down," Julian said. "It's what she does. She suffocates people with pressure." "Well, she picked the wrong mother." Julian looked at her, really looked at her, and saw it. Not just strength, not just anger, but a mother ready to protect, even if she had to walk through fire to do it. The next morning, Julian met with his legal team at his penthouse office, overlooking downtown Chicago. Andrew was already there, flanked by 2 other attorneys from the firm's elite litigation division. "Evelyn is filing in family court. She's pulling in Judge Thorne," Andrew said, pushing papers across the table. "That's one of her country club buddies. Not a coincidence." "She thinks she can control the courtroom," Julian muttered. "She's banking on it." "Then we burn the whole script," Julian said. "We don't just defend Harper. We expose everything." Andrew hesitated. You sure? You're talking about going public, depositions, press. She opened that door. I'm walking through it. Meanwhile, Harper was meeting with Mia again, this time in the back office of the non-profit clinic where they had once interned together. The walls were still the same cheap wood paneling, the coffee still terrible. But Harper felt something she hadn't felt in weeks. Control. Tell me straight, Harper asked. How bad could this judge be? Mia exhaled. Thorne has a reputation. Wealthy parents usually walk out happy. Black single moms, not so much. So I'm walking into a fight I'm expected to lose. Mia leaned in. Then we change expectations. They worked through the night, compiling Harper's work history, medical records, character references, even surveillance footage showing Harper navigating life alone while pregnant. Friends, former professors, co-workers, they all agreed to testify. But just as Harper was gathering strength, Evelyn made her next move. A story broke on a conservative gossip blog. Ford heirs, secret, twins born to unstable ex-nurse. The article was cruelly written, filled with distorted facts and anonymous quotes from close family sources. It painted Harper as a manipulative gold digger, called her emotionally erratic, claimed Julian was being blackmailed into fatherhood. Julian saw it at the same time Harper did. She called him, shaking with fury. She's trying to turn public opinion against me before I even step into court. I'll call the paper. I'll sue. No, Harper snapped. Let her have her headlines. I'll have the truth. But the article did its damage. CPS showed up again, this time unannounced. A neighbor had reported screaming in the apartment. Harper answered the door holding Eden, with Elijah asleep in the next room. The social worker looked embarrassed. We're required to follow up on any repeat calls. Harper let them in. Let them look. Let them see her in her reality, not the one Evelyn had painted, but the one she fought for every single day. After they left, Harper called Julian. She's not going to stop, she whispered. She will, he said, when we make her. The court date came faster than either of them wanted. The courtroom was smaller than Harper had expected. Wood panels, old carpet, stale air. But Evelyn entered like it was a coronation. She wore a pale lavender suit, pearls, hair immaculately pinned. She didn't look at Harper, didn't even glance at her grandchildren in the stroller nearby. Judge Thorne, a silver-haired man with cold eyes, took the bench. The proceedings started predictably. Evelyn's attorney rattled off allegations: erratic behavior, financial instability, poor mental health. He even claimed Harper had refused to name the father for months because she had hoped to extort a settlement. Julian's jaw clenched. When it was Harper's turn to speak, she stood slowly. I'm not a billionaire, she began. I'm not powerful, but I am a mother. And for the last year, I've protected these children from everything that threatened them, including your client. Evelyn shifted in her seat. I didn't ask for Julian to come back into our lives. He chose to, and my children are better for it. But no one, no amount of money, no amount of power is going to take them from me. The room was still. Then Julian rose. He walked slowly to the front of the courtroom. Every eye followed him. I'm Julian Ford, he said, and I'm not here to defend my name. I'm here to defend their mother. He pointed to Harper. My mother wants to make this about class, about status, about who deserves to raise my children. But this isn't her decision. It's mine, and I choose Harper. Every day. Because she didn't run from this. She ran toward it, when I didn't. Judge Thorne looked from Julian to Evelyn. And what do you say, Ms. Ford? He asked. Evelyn stood slowly. Her hands were steady, her voice clipped. I say the welfare of the children must come first, Julian's voice cut in. Then drop the lawsuit and be a grandmother, or keep fighting and lose everything. There was silence. Then Evelyn spoke, quieter now. "I withdraw my petition." Gasps rippled across the room. Judge Thorne banged the gavel. "Case dismissed." Julian let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. But as they walked out, hand in hand, Harper whispered, "She's not done." Julian nodded. "Neither are we." The morning after the court hearing, Harper stood at the window of Julian's penthouse, watching the Chicago skyline drown in fog. The twins were asleep in a nursery, designed in less than a week. Perfect, expensive, sterile. But Harper didn't feel safe. Julian came up behind her with a cup of coffee. "I haven't seen you sleep all night." "I couldn't," she said softly. "She's not done, Julian. I know your mother. That courtroom loss, it just lit the fuse." Julian sighed. "Then we stay ahead of her." But Evelyn didn't strike next with lawsuits or headlines. She went deeper, smarter, and more dangerous. It started with calls from the hospital board, where Harper had once worked. Her old manager texted, "Just a heads up, someone's been asking about your nursing license, asking real questions." Next came a visit from the Department of Health and Family Services. An anonymous tip claimed Harper had falsified patient records at her previous job. It was a lie, but the type that stuck in files, whispered in elevators. Then came the worst. Harper's landlord called. "There's been a fire," he said. "What?" Harper's heart dropped. "It's under control, but it started in your unit." Julian drove her straight there. The apartment was still standing, but the damage was real. Smoke stains blackened the walls, the windows blown out. Fire investigators said it started near the back wall where the twins' crib used to be. Harper stared at the charred remains and felt the breath leave her body. Julian stepped forward. "Arson?" The fire chief nodded. "Accelerant was used. We're opening a criminal investigation." Harper turned to Julian. Her voice broke. "She tried to burn us out." And Julian didn't argue. Not this time. Back at the penthouse, Harper refused to sit still. "She won't stop until she ruins me in a way no judge can fix," Harper said. "She wants me to walk away from you, from our kids." "She'll never get that," Julian growled. But Harper stepped back. "Julian, I need to do something on my own. I have to reclaim my voice. If I keep hiding behind your money, your lawyers, I'll never be more than what she says I am." Julian's expression hardened. "You're not alone?" "I know," Harper said, "but I need to show her I'm still standing because of who I am, not because of what you give me." So Harper made a bold move. She contacted a journalist, someone she trusted from her community health days, a young black woman named Layla James, who ran a podcast called Real Voices. Layla listened quietly as Harper told her everything. Her history with Julian, the betrayal, the birth, the lawsuit, the fire. Layla leaned forward. "You sure you want to go public with this?" "Yes, I want the world to know what someone like Evelyn Ford does behind the curtains. I'm not here for revenge. I just want my name back." When the episode aired a week later, it exploded across social media. The title said it all. Mother of Twins versus Billionaire Dynasty. A fight for truth. Harper's voice filled the airwaves. Her strength, her pain, her refusal to be silent. Within 24 hours, news outlets picked it up. Some framed her as a brave mother. Others tried to sensationalize it. But Harper didn't care. For the first time, she wasn't being spoken about. She was speaking for herself. Then came the twist. A former employee of Evelyn Ford's charitable foundation reached out. An anonymous tip, but explosive. Evelyn had used foundation funds to silence people in the past. NDAs, payouts, manipulating court filings, even bribing local officials to get custody rulings overturned. Julian called Andrew immediately. "We can build a case," Andrew said. "Not just family court. I'm talking federal charges, fraud, misuse of charitable funds, obstruction of justice." Julian stared at the phone in silence. "If we do this, she doesn't just lose in court, she could lose everything." Harper stood nearby, holding Elijah in one arm, Eden in the other, her face unreadable. Julian looked at her. "You want to do this?" Harper nodded. "It's not about vengeance. It's about protecting our kids from ever being afraid of her." They moved fast. Andrew's team filed a federal complaint. The feds got involved within days. Bank records were subpoenaed. Employees were called in. And the more they dug, the darker it got. Evelyn's legal team tried to stall, to deflect, but the storm had begun. And this time, Evelyn wasn't the one pulling the strings. She was the one being dragged into the light. One night, Harper was feeding the twins when Julian walked in holding an envelope. "What is it?" she asked. He opened it. "It's from her." Inside was a single handwritten note. "I surrender, but you will never understand what it cost me." Harper stared at it for a long time. "She finally admits it?" Julian shook his head. "No. She finally lost the power to lie." But Harper didn't smile. She just looked down at her babies. "I'm not celebrating," she whispered. "I'm just grateful they'll never have to fight her." Outside, the city buzzed like normal. Lights, horns, laughter, life. But inside that penthouse, something sacred had returned. Peace. And for Harper, that was enough. For now. The headlines came faster than Harper could read them. Black mother speaks out against billionaire's family. Twins at the heart of a dynasty dispute. Her podcast interview had sparked something raw across the country. Suddenly, she wasn't just a former nurse. She was a voice, a mother, a fighter. Julian watched it unfold from the sidelines, both proud and anxious. He had wanted to protect her from his mother, from the vultures in the media, from the machine that devoured reputations for sport. But Harper, she had walked straight into the fire and somehow made it hers. But Evelyn Ford wasn't done. One morning, as Julian sat at his office desk, flipping through legal briefs, his assistant burst in. "Mr. Ford, your mother just held a press conference." Julian froze. "Where?" "Downtown. Channel 4's live now." He tapped the remote. Evelyn stood at a podium draped in the Ford Foundation's logo. Cameras flashed. Her voice rang out with its usual polished, icy calm. "My son Julian and I have always had our disagreements," she began. "But recent accusations from a former acquaintance of his are deeply troubling. I would like to clarify. The woman in question is not part of our family, and to my knowledge, her children are not related to the Ford lineage." Julian shot to his feet. "She did not," he muttered. Evelyn kept going. "I grieve that someone would use motherhood as a weapon for financial gain and public sympathy. The Ford family stands for integrity, and we will pursue legal action against defamation and false claims." Back at the penthouse, Harper was rocking Elijah when the clip reached her phone. Her fingers trembled. She didn't cry. She didn't even blink. But inside, something cracked open. She called Julian. "She just told the world our babies don't exist," Harper said, her voice steel-edged. "She just declared war," Julian replied. And this time Harper wasn't going to wait. That evening, she stood in front of the same skyline Evelyn had used as her backdrop. Same city, different truth. With Layla's podcast team filming, Harper looked directly into the camera. "You don't have to believe me," she said, "but believe this. No woman carries twins for 9 months, survives labor, and stays silent while someone erases her children." She paused. "My name is Harper Montgomery. I have nothing to sell, nothing to gain. But I have everything to lose if I let this woman rewrite my truth. These children were born out of love, not a scandal. They are not a mistake. They are not a rumor. They are mine, and they are Julian Ford's. The clip went viral overnight, and something changed. People started showing up. Nurses from her former hospital, old friends from nursing school, even Julian's ex-colleagues who had seen them together back then. People confirmed her story, not out of revenge, but because it was time. One person stood out. A former private investigator who used to work for Evelyn reached out anonymously. Through a secured call, he told Andrew, Julian's attorney, something chilling. Years ago, Evelyn paid for a private DNA test. She had Julian followed, collected his discarded water bottle and toothbrush, sent them to a lab. She knew Harper was pregnant. She knew the babies were his before they were born. Andrew leaned forward. Do you have proof? I kept a backup of the report, out of guilt. I'll send it. But you didn't hear it from me. The file landed in Andrew's inbox an hour later. Date stamped, signed, irrefutable. Julian stared at the document. She's known this whole time. Andrew nodded. And she weaponized that knowledge, hid it, then denied it. That's fraud, manipulation, and obstruction. She may have just buried herself. Meanwhile, Harper received a different kind of visitor. Evelyn's lawyer. He showed up without warning. Well-dressed, professional, but his eyes hinted at panic. My client wishes to reach an agreement, he began. Harper folded her arms. An agreement or a bribe? We prefer to resolve this privately. No court, no press. A financial settlement and a retraction. Harper laughed. You think money will clean the mess she made? We're prepared to be generous. Harper stood slowly. Tell Evelyn this. There's not enough money in the world to make a mother pretend her children don't exist. We're not done yet. As the lawyer left in defeat, Harper sat at the kitchen counter, her hands trembling again. But this time it wasn't fear. It was adrenaline, strength, purpose. Julian entered a few minutes later and took her hand. I used to think I needed to protect you from her, he said. I don't need protection, Harper replied. I need justice. Julian looked at her, eyes full of something deeper than love. Then let's go get it. Together. The wind outside howled, but in that penthouse the silence was thick with clarity. For the first time since it all began, Evelyn wasn't holding the power. Harper was. And she wasn't going to let go. Julian stood in the courtroom, sharply dressed in a navy-tailored suit, but it did little to hide the turmoil in his chest. This wasn't just another board meeting or corporate acquisition. This was personal. This was war. And sitting just a few feet away from him was his own mother, Evelyn Ford, unflinching in her signature gray Chanel suit, her chin high, her expression colder than marble. Harper sat beside Julian, her hands folded tightly in her lap. The twins, Elijah and Nia, were with Layla in the hallway, far from the chaos they didn't deserve to be born into. But Harper had insisted on being here. She needed to look Evelyn in the eye when the truth came out. Judge Bernard, a stern but fair man, entered. The courtroom stood. The energy was tense. This wasn't a custody hearing or a scandal tabloid case. This was a paternity lawsuit, brought by Harper not for money or headlines, but for truth. Andrew, Julian's attorney, rose. Your Honor, we submit into evidence a DNA test dated October 6th, 3 years ago. This test was ordered and funded privately by Evelyn Ford, without the knowledge or consent of either Harper Montgomery or Mr. Julian Ford. It confirms with 99.998% certainty that Julian is the biological father of the twins. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Evelyn's attorney stood quickly, trying to object, but Judge Bernard cut him off. Was this test submitted under the court's original subpoena? Yes, Your Honor, Andrew said. along with sworn testimony from a former private investigator who worked for Miss Ford. Evelyn didn't flinch, but Harper saw it. The blink, the tightening of her jaw, the only betrayal she ever allowed her face to show. Julian turned toward her slowly. "You knew?" he asked, voice low but heavy with betrayal. "You knew all along, and you tried to erase them?" Evelyn's mouth didn't move. The judge turned to Evelyn. "Miss Ford, do you wish to respond?" She finally stood. "My son has always been impulsive. I've spent a lifetime protecting this family's legacy from poor choices and emotional decisions." Harper let out a bitter laugh. "Protecting the legacy? By pretending your grandchildren don't exist?" "I was protecting them from you," Evelyn snapped, her voice finally cracking. "You are nothing, Ms. Montgomery. You were a nurse. You had no business being near my son. You don't come from anything. You don't know what it takes to be a Ford." The judge raised a hand. "That's enough." But Harper wasn't done. She stood, voice calm but cutting. "You think I wanted this circus? That I wanted to drag my children into a courtroom to prove they have a right to exist? I was ready to disappear, Evelyn, but you made me fight, and I will not stop until they have the truth." Julian turned to the judge. "Your Honor, I would like to formally amend my legal documents to include my children, birth certificates, custody, all of it. And I'd also like to file for a restraining order against my mother. She's a threat to their emotional well-being." A stunned silence fell over the room. Even Evelyn sat down hard, like the air had been knocked from her chest. The judge nodded. "Given the overwhelming evidence and the emotional nature of this case, I will approve the motion. Mr. Ford will be listed as the legal father of Elijah and Nia Montgomery Ford. This court recognizes them as the rightful heirs and dependents of the Ford estate." The courtroom erupted, not in noise but in relief. Harper exhaled for what felt like the first time in months. Later that night, back at the penthouse, Julian sat in the nursery. Elijah lay asleep in one arm, Nia in the other. Harper stood in the doorway, watching him silently. "You okay?" she asked. Julian looked up. "I don't know. I feel like I just buried the mother I thought I had." Harper walked in and knelt beside him. "No," she said gently, "you buried the image she forced you to believe. But now you get to build something real." Julian kissed Nia's forehead. "I don't know how to be a father." Harper smiled, tears glinting. "Then we learn together." Suddenly, Layla burst in, waving her phone. "You need to see this." A video was circulating. It was footage of Evelyn being escorted out of the courthouse by security, paparazzi swarming, questions flying. Her face, usually unreadable, was etched in something close to panic. But the real surprise was the voice that came after, a former board member of the Ford Foundation speaking to the press. "Julian Ford has proven himself a leader of integrity and accountability, unlike those who've hidden behind power and image. We support his transition into full control of the foundation." Julian stared at the screen. "They're choosing you," Layla whispered. "No," Harper corrected. "They're choosing the truth." And just like that, the tables had turned. But they all knew this wasn't the end. Evelyn Ford didn't lose quietly, and somewhere in the shadows of her legacy, she was already planning her next move. The late afternoon sun stretched long shadows across the Ford estate as Julian stood on the balcony of the guest house, watching Elijah and Nia run through the grass with Layla chasing close behind. Laughter filled the air, unfiltered, honest, new. For the first time in years, it felt like something real was blooming. Behind him, Harper stepped out, a soft breeze lifting her curls. She hadn't said much since the court ruling. Everything had moved so fast, too fast maybe, but the silence between them wasn't cold. It was full of weight, of questions too big for quick answers. Julian turned, holding a small velvet box in his palm. "I'm not proposing," he said, half smiling. "Not today." Harper tilted her head. "That's probably wise." He opened the box anyway. Inside were two delicate gold lockets, one engraved with E, the other with N. "For them," he said, "to remind them that their lives didn't start in courtrooms. They started in love." Harper's eyes filled. She stepped forward, touching the lockets with trembling fingers. "They'll know," she said, "because we'll show them." But peace wouldn't hold for long. 2 weeks later, news broke. A leaked recording from inside the Ford Foundation exposed a planned boardroom coup, Evelyn Ford at the center. Her voice sharp, calculated. She hadn't accepted the court's ruling. She wanted full control back, not just of the foundation, but of Julian himself. She was coming for custody. The headlines lit up. Evelyn Ford accused of plotting corporate sabotage against own son. Ford family civil war. Legacy on the line. Julian stared at the screen, fists clenched. He could handle corporate backstabbing. He could even handle the press. But he wouldn't let her near the twins again. Harper entered the room just as Layla slammed her laptop shut. "She's crossing every line," Layla muttered. "Does she even know what she's fighting for anymore?" "She's fighting to win," Julian said quietly. "Not for them, for control." Harper turned to Julian. "Then it's time we stop reacting. It's time we lead." She had an idea. 3 days later, the Ford Foundation hosted its biggest annual gala. Evelyn wasn't invited, but she showed up anyway, stepping onto the red carpet like nothing had changed. Cameras flashed. The crowd buzzed. But this time, no one turned to her. All eyes were on the stage, where Julian stood with Harper beside him and the twins in his arms. He cleared his throat. "I'm not here tonight to speak as a billionaire, or a Ford, or even as a CEO. He looked down at Elijah, who giggled into the mic. "I'm here as a father." The room quieted. For too long, power in this family meant silence, manipulation, image. But the next generation deserves better. They deserve truth, compassion, accountability. He stepped aside as Harper took the mic, and they deserve to see women, especially black women, respected, protected, and never erased, no matter what name they carry. Applause erupted. Real, loud, fierce. And in the back of the room, Evelyn stood frozen, alone. No cameras turned to her now, no hands reaching for handshakes. Her time had passed, and everyone in that room knew it. As Julian stepped off the stage, the twins reaching for his neck, Harper smiled through tears. "They'll remember this night," she whispered. He nodded. "So will I." Outside, a reporter stopped Julian on his way to the car. "Mr. Ford, what would you say to people watching this story unfold, people who might feel like the odds are always stacked against them?" Julian looked straight into the camera. "I'd tell them legacy isn't built by bloodlines. It's built by choices, by standing up when it's easier to disappear, and by loving louder than the hate that tries to silence you." He paused, glancing down at Harper and the twins beside him. "This isn't the end of our story. It's just the beginning." As the car pulled away and the city lights blurred behind them, one thing was clear. Some stories are born from pain, but the ones worth telling are those that rise from truth.